Hello, my name is Martin. Welcome to the new WeaselWood project. In today's episode we are building a vertical clamping jig for the table saw, as you can see in the background. Now let me show you how to build this jig, and then I will show you how to can use it. Let's get started. For this project I used some 18mm plywood. I bought this wood from a local hardware store, and it's always necessary to square it up, because their saw is pretty much weared out. So I bought it with a few millimeters oversize and cut it to final measure by myself, so I could assure the right size and angles. After all the parts had the final size, I adjusted my crosscut fence to 45 degrees and cut a wedge out of the vertical braces. Now all the parts are cut and you can already guess the final form. To connect the parts I used my domino joiner. If you have more parts with the same joint positions, you can use a guiding rail and some clamps, like I did, to ensure the exact alignment and the repeatability for the other parts. The distance from the edge is given by the indexing pins of the domino joiner. For the vertical braces I set the parts and the joiner flat on the bench, and also used the indexing pins to ensure the same distance from the edge. The first proper test fit and the parts are merged nice together. I measured the space between the two vertical braces and cut some support braces to make the construction more solid. If you want to cut such small pieces on a table saw, you could use a 350 by 350mm square piece of wood to have 90 degrees fence on the sliding table like I do. I personally like this method better than the whip fence. I tested the fit of the parts and drilled the joints similar to the vertical braces. And don't forget to mark the front and the upside. The joints between the vertical braces and the support braces are not that critical. I just measured it with the tape measure and aligned the jointer via the angle and the indexing pins. and because we can, another test fit. I want to have a hole pattern similar to the MFT table in the vertical panel, so I used the table as a template and marked the holes from underneath with my 20mm Forstner drill bit. As the positions were marked, I prepared my drill press and drilled the hole pattern, so I could use the same bench clamps that I am using on the bench to clamp the parts to the jig. And I noticed I need a bigger countersink. Doh! Anyway, I used some sandpaper to deburr the holes. To ensure that the parts stay in the right angle, I decided to make a fence out of plywood for the vertical panel and joined it on. I had a sheet metal strip with a hole pattern lying around that fit perfectly in the T-nut of my sliding table, so I used it as a groove stone. I tapped 2 holes and fixed 2 M6 screws in there. I had to mill 2 8x40mm slots in the base plate that align with the M6 screws, so I set up my router and a routing template to make those. With the slots and the T-nut, it's possible to align and adjust the whole jig against the saw blade. Before I assembled the jig, I set up my old, spoiler alert for future projects, wink wink, router table to mill a nice 2mm radius on all edges. The parts were finished and I started to glue and clamp them together. One thing that I forgot about was to make some cutouts for the bench clamps in the vertical braces. So I marked them and cut 2 holes with a 50mm circle cutter in each brace. I went ahead with the assembly and the parts merged together nicely. As you can see with the holes, there is enough clearance for the bench clamps. The next day, the glue had enough time to harden and I removed the clamps. The jig looked great and I got excited to make the first test cut. So I set up the jig on the sliding table and pushed it against the cross-cut fence to ensure that it stays rectangular to the blade. For the first test cut, I set the blade to 22.5 degrees and trimmed the fence on the jig. The big moment was there and I prepared the first cut with a piece of scrap wood. I used the spacer between the piece and the saw table to have enough clearance for the offcut. At least now you should see the actual use of this jig. I designed it to cut acute angles on the table saw, and as you can see, it works beautiful. In this test I cut a 22.5 degree angle to make a wooden wedge with 135 degree exterior angle. I have some future projects in mind for which I am going to use this jig. At least I think it will look fancy to have some pieces of furniture with not just boring rectangular edges. Acute angles for the win. Stay tuned to see what we are going to make in the next videos. Thank you for watching, please support me with a subscription and maybe a thumbs up if you like this video. Have a nice day.